Hello, this is James from Indy Hammered Knives, and you are in the Indy Forge today. So I get a lot of questions. James, do you make those Mosaic pins? And of course I say yes. And so then the next question always is, well, how do you make a Mosaic pin? Now, I'm going to show you my tricks, which make it very easy. And this is definitely something that you can do at home. So welcome to the Forge. Here we go. These are my supplies. And so we're going to put 11 pieces inside this brass tube, which makes your standard mosaic. And we're just going to do a star mosaic today. And so very simple pieces of equipment. I'm going to put together a kit so that you can do all of this at home and save yourself an awful lot of money. Because these are about $40 a piece if you buy them at retail. The price to do this on your own is much cheaper, for about a quarter of the cost. So the first thing you do is that you're going to seal off one end of this tube, and all you need is Scotch tape. And so we just want to close off that end, just because the epoxy that we're going to use to make this pin solid, which everything I'm going to do today is teach you how to make a solid pin and the right way to make this pin. There's definitely a million different ways to make it, but if it's not completely solid, then it'll never be able to be used for a knife. I'm going to use a two-part epoxy. I'll explain later what this is, but this is a flex epoxy. It's a lot like what I normally use for my handles. However, this has got a 72-minute pot life, which means that you've got 72 minutes to work this epoxy, which is a very, very slow set time. And I've got a medicine cup here that I'm going to put exactly 5 ounces of the epoxy resin, which is clear, or milliliters, I'm sorry, 5 milliliters of the hardener. And the measuring cup is essential because you want to make sure that this is exactly 50-50, otherwise it won't cure properly. And so the measuring cup is ideal. So for my standard pin, I use a dye to dye that black. Now you can use any color dye that you'd like. There's a lot of cool dyes out there. But black, to start off with, is probably the most practical. Based on whatever handle you're going to put on there, black always looks really nice. So I just add just enough to turn that black. So you say, James, how are you going to get that epoxy in that tube? That's really challenging. And so my trick is my handy dandy candle that's right next to me, because this is very thick. This is, in just its regular room temperature, is about the thickness of tar. So there's no way that that's going to pour in there. So what we do is we heat this up, because we don't have a $2,000 vacuum to suck that air out, and we don't need it. We'll buy a $1 candle instead. So I'm going to heat this slowly, which also activates this two-part epoxy. So that means that the actual workable time of this is a little bit less than 72 minutes, but it's still a lot longer than most epoxies. I just heat it up enough so that the consistency of this epoxy is the same as water. I want it that thin. And that is really the only trick. Okay. So, fold my cup in a little bit, make a nice spout, and then I start to pour. So hopefully my hands won't get in the way, so you can see what kind of line I'm talking about. But what we're trying to do is fill this tube about 3/4 of the way full. Do not fill it all the way up to the top. It's not necessary, and it'll become very messy if you do that. So about 3/4 of the way up this tube is what I'm doing. Keeping my hand steady and having that nice lot, that bead. Okay, so when it fills to the top, that means that there's an air pocket somewhere in there. What I want to do is use my biggest square tube and push that down to the bottom. Put my finger on the top there so that the air is pushing out the sides and the spaces that the other pins are going to go into. And then I pull it out. This is also my measuring stick. As you can see, I'm not nearly high enough yet. So use that as a measuring stick, and what that does, and I'll use a couple of the other tubes as well to make sure that there is epoxy everywhere in between these pieces that I'm going to put together. This is the smaller of the two tubes. So again, I'm going to push that down, use it as a measuring stick. As you can see, I'm getting a lot higher, and I'm almost where I need to be to assemble the rest of the parts. And you're going to have some left over. You won't use all the glue. 10 milliliters is more than you need, but you don't want to come up short. So you're going to throw a little bit out afterwards, but that's okay. Better to have more than what you need than not enough. Because once you start this process, it's on. Otherwise, you have to throw it away. That's a lot of wasted product. Okay, I'm going to start with the smallest pieces first. And basically, I have had these perfectly made for this pin so that as you assemble it, there's only one way that these will all go together. You start with 4 small rods on the outside of the larger square tube. And if they fit, it's going to put all the pieces together right where they need to be, because there's only one way that they'll actually fit. So that way, when your mosaic is finished, it's perfect. As perfect as a handmade item can be. And so you don't rush it, but you're going to put some force on there and you're going to push these down. And while I'm doing this, it's pushing the air up. So although the mosaic looks complicated, it's really not. Now I will tell you, this shop is not the warmest shop in the world when the forge isn't on, but it is room temperature. If you try to do this on any temperature other than 70 degrees, this is going to get a lot thicker, a lot faster. So you definitely don't want to work in a cold shop. You want to, but make sure you're at room temperature, otherwise it makes this much more difficult than it needs to be. Because if you're pushing any harder than what I am right now, then your epoxy is too hard and it's too thick and it's not going to rise up the way that it should. And that, my friends, is it. You just made yourself a $40 mosaic pin that is solid for about a quarter of the cost. And that is it. So all the pieces that you need for this are going to be available in a kit, as you can see at the end of this video, on a link that you can go to my website and buy all of this in one very inexpensive package. These pieces were made micrometrically perfect to fit inside that tube. Any variance of any kind will make it impossible for those pieces to fit in. So if you don't buy them all together, then, and if you find these pieces in different arenas on the web or at different supply shops or a hobby store, they may not actually be as precise as these, because even if you are 1/1000th of an inch off, they're not going to fit. So I can take a lot of that out as far as the frustration goes with these supplies here, and so I wish you the best of luck. It's fun and it's easy, a little messy, but definitely if you're into mosaics, this is going to save you a lot of money.